Check, check, mic check. Check, check, mic check. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klender, and it has been a minute since I have been here in this feed with you. We won't dwell on why. If you want the juicy gossip, go listen to episode 136 of my other show, The Creative Imposter, entitled Podcaster Imposter. More importantly, did you miss me? No, I haven't forgotten about you. Quite the contrary. I have been deep in thought about you, and woo dilly have I got some ideas. Want to know what's gotten my creative juices flowing? Recession! Are you nervous? Your palms getting sweaty? Are you thinking about scaling back on your spending this year? I'm taking a risk by saying this. You might even be thinking of scaling back on your podcast. Shudder. Well, if you're feeling this media-magnified stress, your listener may be in a full-blown panic. This episode was inspired by one of my clients, Paul Riley, over at the Q&A Sales Podcast, who has been full of ideas lately about how a recession can actually mean opportunity. It makes sense, and I'll tell you why. Here at the Creative Imposter Studios, when we work on content strategy for your podcast at the launch of your show or at the start of a new season or a new calendar year or a new quarter, we talk about your purpose, your listener, the problem you help to solve, the change you want to make, and what you want your listener to do as a result of engaging with your content. This is good and necessary and useful. However, there's a problem with this approach. Things change. And if we're not considering what your listener needs right now, as opposed to 5, 10, 20, 100 episodes ago, we are missing a golden opportunity to be of service, to influence their decision-making, and to strengthen the bond of trust that you have with them through your content. In fact, rather than scaling back, you may want to double down on your podcast this year to assure them, to provide them resources to help them get through this current economic cycle. So I ask you to take a moment, gather your team if you have one, and let's consider how inflation, interest rates, gas prices, food prices, mortgage rates, rents, supply chain shenanigans, quiet quitting, whatever may be affecting your listener in practical, social, and emotional ways, how it may affect their behavior, their decision-making as relates to the industry or niche that you are in, and how you can best take care of your listener right now. If your listener is a consumer and you're in financial services, can you reassure them and prevent them from pulling all of their money out of their investment portfolio? If your listener is a retail store owner and you're a distributor, what practical sales or cost-saving advice can you provide for them? If your listener is a therapeutic mental health practice owner and you're a business consultant, how can you support them when they get flooded with folks seeking therapy in the midst of their economic distress, especially if you're in our part of the world where it's winter, and winter in the Midwest, let's face it, can be long. If you're in the business of arts and entertainment, how can you make your listener laugh or provide an opportunity for self-reflection, catharsis? If you're in the business of sales coaching, how can you help your listeners strengthen their mindset in the face of tough times and think outside of the box? This may mean creating podcast episode content specifically around these topics. This may look like adding a promo for a special service or product or opportunity or training or event that you are offering that meets their needs now. This may sound like an acknowledgement of what they're going through in your episode intro, or making internal music selections for a specific emotional vibe, or creating a bonus episode or a whole bonus special series in your podcast feed. This may mean creating a fresh strategy for the start of the new year and creating thoughtful content that will support that strategy right now. Maybe this looks like reinforced social media outreach with content generated by your show. Maybe your audience doesn't need to hear something different from you at all. They just need to hear from you more often, especially if you look back into your archives and you see episodes that you've already released featuring content that feels useful and relevant and salient right now. And you want to highlight those past episodes in a new way for your longtime listener and present them freshly to the listener or follower who just joined your audience the other day. Maybe you want to increase your podcast marketing efforts in order to reach that listener who you can help right now who hasn't discovered your show yet. There are abundant ways that you can use your podcast to connect meaningfully with your listener as we move into this new year. And if anything that I said in this positive podcast ranty episode sparks an idea for you, just wait till you hear what we're cooking up. Get your hand out of the podcast cookie jar, a little more patience, and then tune in for a brand new episode during that weird week between Christmas and New Year's. You know, the week when time has no meaning and there are no new good podcast episodes to listen to. You know what I'm talking about. Well, there will be right here on Podcast Envy, and I think it might just change everything. What are you dreaming up for your audience in the new year? We'd love to know. Whether you're new to podcasting or you've been producing your show for a while, I'd love to hear your ideas and inspiration and answer any questions you may have about podcasting on an upcoming Hey Andrea episode of Podcast Envy. Email me, Andrea@thecreativeimposter.com, and put Podcast Envy in the subject line. You may just get a shout out for your show along with an answer to your question or a little validation for your idea on a future episode. Podcast Envy is produced by your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. That's me. The Podcast Envy theme music is by Valentin Sosnitsky, courtesy of the Free Sound Project at freesound.org, and our podcast Angel music is by Benjamin Mastropolito, also on freesound.org as Lemon Cream. All music is licensed under the Creative Commons. Our episodes are mixed by Edwin Ruiz, and hey, if you want your show to sound as good as ours, hire us. Put the magic audio mojo of the Creative Imposter Studios to work for you. Thanks so much for listening, and here's to making your podcast the envy of everyone else.